What's up, everybody? Welcome back once again to another episode of Axel's Analysis. And I'm reviewing the second show, FWE ReFueled Night Two. As always, I'm the man too cheap to make up his own name, so that's still an Axel Mulligan. And I'm going to try and come up with a new sort of catchphrase to kick off the show because this was boring the shit out of me. So if anybody's got any suggestions, maybe like the NXT nerd or something like that, I don't know. If anybody's got any other suggestions, just let me know. Send me a tweet at Axel Mulligan. But being a man too cheap to make up his own name, so that still is getting a bit boring for me. Probably getting a bit boring for you guys to listen to it. So if anybody's got any suggestions for what I could use, just, as I say, at Axel Mulligan, give me a shout. Definitely one of the best wrestling shows of the year, hands down. And I'd rank it probably number 3. I put it higher than WrestleMania. This is FWE ReFueled Night 2. I'd probably put it behind War of the Worlds, which was a cross-brand promotion between Ring of Honor and New Japan, and NXT's Arrival back in February, I believe it was. But this show was it was a brilliant show from top to bottom. Kind of a couple of little glitches along the way, or not necessarily glitches, but flaws maybe. But on the whole, just a fantastic wrestling show, you know. Some brilliant matches, some absolutely brilliant matches. One of the best TLC matches I've ever seen, with one of the coolest spots I've ever seen in a wrestling match. A brilliant, I suppose, hardcore fight in there as well. A decent women's championship match. But yeah, just all around a really good show. Like, a lot of the time when I'm watching wrestling, I sort of switch off. So I watch a lot of it on my laptop and I switch off, sort of check Twitter, check Facebook. But this show, I was just invested throughout the entire show. And that's sort of the key word for this show, really, is invested. I was invested in the show. I'm invested in new guys and new girls. And it was just such an enjoyable show to watch. I was tweeting throughout on my phone, not on my laptop, before anybody picks up on what I just said. And it just got, you know, the show just seemed to get a lot of appreciation on Twitter from fans. The FWE guys, I believe Jordan Schneider, the commentator, was sort of running the Twitter account for them that night. And he was retweeting a lot of stuff. He was sending out a lot of favourites to tweets and stuff. I had a lot of mine retweeted and favourited. Lots of other people did as well. But just a really enjoyable show. And you struggle to get that with a lot of other promotions, WWE, on a regular basis. But if you can have 2 shows in 2 nights, FWE, where you can hands down say one's definitely a top 10 show, one's definitely a top 5 show, you know, the company's doing well. It's a shame that they don't put on shows more often, because they really could, I wouldn't say create a buzz, but they could really sort of attract a new level of fan to their product. You know, a lot of people sort of, in my opinion, settle for mediocrity with the WWE. But with the indie wrestling, there's a lot of stuff that goes unnoticed and it goes unappreciated a lot of the time. That's what I'm trying to do now, is just sort of talk about this show, give my opinions on it, give little reviews on each of the matches, and hopefully, for FWE's sake, if I can gain them 1 fan, I've done my job as far as I'm concerned. Well, it's not really my job, it's just something that I'm trying to put across to get more people invested in this product, because it really is just something completely different altogether. It's a different kettle of fish, and it's just a really enjoyable promotion to watch. The commentary team was Jerry Strauss, Jordan Schneider, and Robbie E. Was on commentary on this show. I think I would have preferred to have had Colt, but beggars can't be choosers. Joey Ryan versus Wes Draven kicked off the show. It was a nice solid match, you know, to kick off the pay-per-view. Which, by the way, I paid good money for. Well, I paid what I thought was a decent amount of money. I paid £10, which is the equivalent of $14.99. and I would have gladly paid triple that amount for it because it was a phenomenal show. Anyway, sorry, Wes Draven versus Joey Ryan. Nice solid match, as I say. I'm glad Joey Ryan's back on the indie circuit now because he had his little run in TNA after his little, thing he had with Al Snow and the gut check judges. It really wasn't too much to shout about, really. It was just, as soon as he sort of finished that little feud with them, it was just like, they overdid the sleaziness of Joey Ryan, and it just looked a bit uncomfortable to watch. But now that he's on the indie circuit, it looks as though he feels more at home. And, unfortunately for Joey, I think this is his position. I know he was really obviously, like when he first went to TNA, he really wanted to be there because he felt that he was good enough to be in one of those bigger companies. And he probably is, but it's just they didn't know what to do with it, I would say. Don't get me wrong, he was never going to be a world champion, but he could have been maybe an X Division champion or a TV champion, or maybe a tag team champion. But I think Joey's found his spot in life, and it is on the indie circuit, and he's doing well. Obviously his tag team with Candice LeRae, they're the Pro Wrestling Guerrilla tag team champions. So he's got a nice little gig going on the indie circuit, humping the road, as they say. And I talk about Joey Ryan in that regard, and I was surprised that Draven got the win here because, as I say, where Joey Ryan's been for over the last 2 years, 18 months, whatever it's been, Draven picked up the win. I was quite shocked that he picked up the win, to be honest with you. It was, granted it was with a roll-up, but it was a really cool roll-up. What he did was he sort of went up in a backcracker position, and instead of hitting a backcracker, he hooked his legs underneath the armpits of Joey, and he rolled him over, sort of backwards, if you will. 1, 2, 3, Draven picked up the win. But no, Draven looked impressive as well. Obviously, he was in the Fatal 4-Way match the night before, and he looked impressive there. He was impressive again on night 2. And I'm invested in this guy. He's got a really interesting sort of look. He wears a bandana. He's got half of his face painted white, and he's just he's a brilliant athlete as well. And he can wrestle a match. So fair play to Wes Draven. You've got yourself a new fan here. Match 2 was a 6-man tag team match that was made on night 1. Matt Taven, Mike Law, and Jorge Santi versus Damian Darlin, the Rockstar, and Kevin Tibbs. Kevin Tibbs, as much as the little nameplate as he was making his entrance said Kevin Tibbs, he was going under the name of Mr. Tibbs, as announced by ring announcer AJ, who's sort of he's like a manager, but not a manager. He's got clients, but doesn't manage them. Doesn't make much sense to me, but whatever. I only realised when I was sort of re-watching this show as well regarding the Rockstar. I don't know why, but he reminds me of Terry Gordy. I think it's like his look. He's a big guy, got the long hair, sort of not fat, but a little bit chubby maybe. But it just reminded me so much of Terry Gordy. That's a big compliment to pay because Terry Gordy was a brilliant wrestler, one of the biggest big men in the history of pro wrestling, I would say. It's actually something that I agree with Michael Hayes about. But no, he looked like a decent wrestler as well. He worked the match well when he was in the ring. But it was my first time seeing him in the ring, Tibbs as well, and also Mike Law. But they all impressed me enough to make me want to watch them again, which is obviously a good thing because, as I say, being interested in wrestlers is just a bottomless pit. You can never be interested in too many wrestlers. But the faces won with this one. It was actually quite cool. Mike Law hit a swinging tornado DDT to the Rockstar. He was sort of sat on the top rope with his feet on the middle rope, and he hit a swinging tornado DDT. The Rockstar went halfway across the fucking ring, and Matt Taven hit the frog splash. Not quite RVD style, not quite Eddie Guerrero style, but it was a brilliant frog splash nonetheless. So yeah, as I say, the faces, Matt Taven, Mike Law, and Jorge Santi won this match. JT Dunn versus Bandito Jr. was up next. JT Dunn was his debut in FWE, and he was accompanied by his tag team partner David Starr. I've never heard of David Starr before, so I can't comment on him, but I've heard of JT Dunn. I know he's got a bit of, he making a little bit of noise on the indie circuit. It's my first time watching him wrestle as well. Again, another one who's won me over as a fan at the first time I tried. Bandito was his second appearance of the weekend. He was in that Fatal 4-1 match that I spoke about just now with West Raven, where he was in Chris Sabin and I can't remember the other guy, but he was from the year 22, 25 or something. I can't remember his name off the top of my head now, but it was quite interesting to see Bandito actually. I didn't notice it on the first show, but on the second show, he was wearing this mask to the ring, like a lucha kind of mask, and he took it off. I'm guessing he did it on the first show as well, so I didn't notice, but he took it off to get into the ring. I don't know, I thought it was kind of cool, because obviously, you only generally see guys wearing masks throughout their entrance, throughout their match, throughout their exit. But I thought it was kind of cool to see a guy actually take his mask off. And not quite like Kane when he had that big fucking black mask on. When he was the Embrace the Hate Kane, as I like to call it, or the Bullshit Kane. Both men had a couple of really good spots where they would sort of dive in this match. Bandito had the first one, went a somersault plancha, and his legs clattered into the guardrail. And I don't know why, I've seen countless matches of somersault planchas over the years, but I just thought this one was really cool for some reason. It sort of looked to be hit with a lot of ferocity. It was quite a solid plancha, really. And the second one was it was by JT Dunn. Bandito was sort of catch his breath. This was a few minutes later in the match. Bandito was catch his breath up against the guardrail, sort of in the corner. JT ran in to attack him, but Bandito elevated him up over the guardrail, and then sort of both men sort of composed themselves. And Bandito went to hit a superplex. He climbed up on the guardrail and looked to hit a superplex onto the floor. But Dunn managed to sort of punch his way out of it by, he knocked Bandito to the ground. Bandito went back to the guardrail, but once he got close enough, Dunn just sort of launched himself over the top rope and took him out with it was almost like a flying splash, but it was so cool. I loved it. It got a couple of, got a decent FWE chant and an even better "This is awesome" chant. If you can invoke that kind of reaction from the crowd, you've done a good job. And there was one other awesome moment in the match. Bandito springboarded off of the middle rope and he hit a cutter to Dunn. The 2 count, he kicked out right at the perfect moment, because you just thought 1, 2, 3, but it was 1, 2, and then it was like 9 tenths, 2 and 9 tenths, and JT Dunn kicked out. He really sold the count well, because you thought this match was over. It was like, no, it's not. It was brilliantly done. You don't get that very often. There's not that many people who can sell a decent 2 count in the world. But fair play to JT Dunn. On that occasion, he did it. He did it brilliant. Bandito did pick up the win though. JT Dunn was looking for a rolling elbow, like the Chris Hero finisher, what did he call it in NXT? The OBE. But Bandito avoided the contact. He caught Dunn with a super kick and then nailed him with a reverse DDT. But it was sort of like he jumped when he hit the DDT. He didn't just fall back. He sort of jumped back, and I thought that was really cool as well. So that was probably the best match of the night so far. Obviously, we're only 3 matches into the show, but that was just a really well worked match. And both men congratulated one another afterwards, and rightly so as well, because they both wrestled a brilliant match. And there's only going to be big things to come for these guys. They're both quite young, obviously hungry. Whether we see them in the WWE or not is another matter, but maybe TNA or Ring of Honor is a better option for them with their styles. So we'll see where things take them over the next couple of years, I suppose. But until then, I'm going to try and enjoy as much as I can of them on the indie circuit. Colt Cabana versus Johnny Gargano was up next. And this match I thought was a fine example of, I think I said it on the last show, of Colt Cabana being such a gifted wrestler and it being such a shame that he's got this comedy gimmick. Because he had a great opponent to help him out with this match, don't get me wrong, but he really worked every part of it well. He worked the mat-based stuff, he worked the crowd well. Just everything that Colt touched in this match was brilliant, I thought. And I don't just say that because I am a Colt Cabana fan, I'm not going to lie. But if you've seen the show, you might agree with me, you might disagree with me. Just obviously, as I always say, if you've got any opinions, just let me know at Axel on Twitter. But it just seemed to flow so well, this match. You know, there wasn't a bad spot in it. You know, there was no like standout spots like we had in the last match. But there was no sloppiness, which is a good thing. There was one sort of I said there was one decent part of the match, but it was fairly cool. Colt went for a GTS, but Gargano countered it into the Gargano gate, and it was done really smoothly. It wasn't quite like I don't know if anyone's ever seen the G1 climax final from earlier in the year between Nakamura and Okada, when Okada went for the Rainmaker, but Nakamura countered it, and it was, how he countered it, I'll never know. I've seen it 100 times, and how he countered that, I will never know. But if anyone's seen that, you'll know what I'm talking about. That was such a beautiful counter. As I say, this one wasn't quite in the realms of that, but it was still pretty sweet in my opinion. Gargano, though, he picked up his second win of the weekend. He basically used a crucifix roll up. But Colt's nose was pretty banged up. Quite a lot. Not a lot of blood. I mean, fuck me, I've broken my nose a couple of times and I created a lot more claret than Colt did. But, you know, it was busted open pretty badly, or busted up pretty badly, rather. I don't know if he broke it or if it was just like if he took a bad shot and made it bleed or whatever. But no, it was as I said, it was a very well wrestled match, and I'd like to see Colt wrestling that kind of match more often as opposed to these comedy matches. As much as the comedy matches do amuse me, like there's one point in this match where he had Gargano in a submission move, and he was taking requests from the crowd, and he was saying, "Yeah, I'm doing well, aren't I?" And, you know, that was cool. That worked for that part of the match, but you can't, in my opinion, he shouldn't wrestle the entire match in that fashion. Gargano, on the other hand, sky's the limit for this guy. You know, he's got so much potential. He's not that old. I don't know exactly how old he is, but I'm pretty sure he's got years and years ahead of him. You know, touch wood that he doesn't have a bad injury. But you know, the sky's the limit for the guy. You know, he can do anything he wants as long as he sort of keeps his head down and keeps working towards whatever goals that he's got. The next match was Little Guido versus yours truly, Alex Reynolds, and Joel Gertner. Obviously, had this sort of spat with Reynolds the night before. He played the role of the ring announcer after delivering a promo. You know, Joel Gertner's only can deliver a promo one way. It's going to be full of sex and seedy comments, and nobody can deliver a promo Joel Gertner style any better than Joel Gertner, really, can they? You know, as I said before, Tim, if you listen, man, I know you'll agree with me. I know you're a big ECW fan, well, a bigger ECW fan than what I am, and I'm a big enough ECW fan. But basically, Gertner's promo, he just sort of said before the match, talking about how long he's known Guido, and predicted that Alex was going to tap out. That was like the basic gist of it. But the talking point was actually the ending of the match. Guido had Reynolds locked in an armbar, and Gertner climbed up onto the apron. Just as Reynolds started tapping out, Gertner climbed up onto the apron, and there was a point to it, and I actually called it on Twitter at the time. The ref obviously was trying to get Gertner down off the apron, didn't see the tap or didn't hear the tap, so Guido let go of the hold, and as he let go, Gertner jumped down. And smart wrestling fans that are listening, you'll know what's coming. So Guido turned around straight into, it was like, as I mentioned on the last show, Reynolds' finish, it was like he sort of pushed Guido up into the air and hit him, looked like a code breaker type of move. And picked up the win, picked up the 3 count. Gertner took the mic post-match and revealed that Reynolds had quote-unquote knocked on his door and basically turned his back on Guido. He said to Guido, you can talk about the past of everybody else, but we are the present and we are the future. And as I said, I called it a Gertner heel turn, sided with Alex Reynolds. Don't expect this one to be over when FWE's back in February. The next match was quite frustrating, I thought. I thought it could have been, behind the TLC match, I thought it could have been the best match of the night. And I was disappointed. It wasn't a bad match. They could have just done so much more. It was Sanjay Dutt versus Chris Sabin. And I don't know, maybe I was just expecting like an X Division kind of match, but it wasn't. It was very ground based, and just a lot of the fans in the arena used it as their piss break, basically. There was little reaction from the crowd for the good spots, apart from towards the end when they started filtering back into their seats. But I was just hoping for a faster pace, and it didn't really come for a sustained period of time. Nothing of note really. Sanjay Dutt picked up the win. He countered an attempted powerbomb with a roll up. Seen it before. I was just so disappointed. I'm a big Chris Sabin fan. I like Sanjay Dutt as well. They could have had, as I said, I think, the number 2 match of the night, and for whatever reason it didn't happen. I don't know if the chemistry just wasn't there, or if they planned to wrestle a different kind of match for whatever reason, I don't know, but it was frustrating and disappointing at the same time. Anyway, not to dwell on it. The next match, Christina Von Erich was supposed to be teaming with Veda Scott versus Candice LeRae and her mystery partner. Another first for me, not seen Christina Von Erich before. She looked great, and I don't usually in the ring. But again, we got what we expected. Joey Ryan was announced as the partner for Candice LeRae. I think everybody saw that coming a mile off. But I think everybody's seen it coming from a mile off as well, that Carlito was going to be the partner for Christina Von Erich. Obviously, from what happened the night before when Joey Ryan super kicked Veda Scott's teeth down her throat, and Carlito came out to make the save. But again, this match was a fine example of what I was speaking about last time, with women being able on the indie circuit to go toe to toe with the men against one another. And the best example of that, I thought, in this match was when Carlito was on the outside. They were both a legal man and woman in the ring. Carlito was out on the floor, and Candice she hit a suicide dive, which she turned into a tornado DDT. That was one of the coolest spots of the night. Not just necessarily the match, but the night. And, it's, as I say, I just can't stress enough that it's just brilliant that these independent guys and girls are willing to fight one another. And I say you won't get that in the WWE. I don't know if you get that in TNA, Ring of Honor. The women don't tend to fight in Ring of Honor, which is a shame because they've got some talented wrestlers there. Mischief, Veda Scott, so on and so forth. Another thing that was also quite cool between Candice and Carlito was when she hit him with the bullplex. And that was cool, no pun intended, obviously, with Carlito's previous WWE gimmick. At the end of the match came about, Carlito spat his apple into Candice's face. And then he sort of turned around and he knocked Joey to the ground. And he went back after Candice LeRae. She was sort of had her back to him. She was stood on the middle rope, looking to climb up onto the top rope. She kicked him in the chest. And Cardigo sort of turned round. Well, Candice climbed up on his shoulders, actually, now I think about it. Candice climbed up on his shoulders, looking to hit a reverse Hurricanrana or reverse Rana. She couldn't get it, and Cardigo turned around and he ate a super kick from Joey. And Candice managed to hit the reverse Hurricanrana after that, but she dropped Cardigo right on his head. It didn't look dangerous because Cardigo's got enough hair to cushion the fall. But you know, it was that move that picked up the win. Joey pinned him 1, 2, 3. And the PWG Tag Team Champions pick up another win over the weekend. I just can't help but being impressed with these guys. Like, each time I've seen them, I've probably seen them wrestle about a dozen times together, maybe a little bit less than that. But I just can't help but be impressed even more with them each time because they've got such great chemistry. You know, Joey's obviously got a lot of experience. Candice LeRae, you know, she's a hell of a wrestler. You know, people mainly talk about male wrestlers, the things that they can do in the ring, but a lot of stuff what female wrestlers do in the ring just goes not necessarily unnoticed, but underappreciated maybe. And anybody who's willing to see some top women's wrestling, you know, you need to watch a girl like Candice LeRae because she is just phenomenal. She will do anything that's asked of her, it would seem. No questions asked. And she does a hell of a job whilst doing it. And if you can't appreciate that, again, as I said last time about Tommy Dreamer, if you don't appreciate Tommy Dreamer, you don't appreciate wrestling. If you can't appreciate what a girl like Candice LeRae does for the business, you don't appreciate wrestling, in my opinion, because she is the epitome of what a wrestler should be. And I'll leave it at that. Speaking of Tommy Dreamer, he's up next against Drew Galloway. And this was, as I said, Chris Sabin and Sanjay Dutt, in my opinion, could easily have been the number 2 match of the night. This topped what I thought Chris Sabin versus Sanjay Dutt would have been, or should have been. This was just phenomenal. And it wasn't, Drew didn't carry the match at all. Tommy Dreamer proved that he's still got it. As I said before, he's never going to be the best wrestler. He never has been the best wrestler. But he's by no means the worst. And what an incredible match he put on with Drew here. They told a good little story at the beginning of the match. Drew was on the outside, Tommy hit a baseball slide, and I was convinced that Tommy was injured. He might well have been, I don't know. But he sort of appeared to hurt his ankle or his leg or his knee, I don't know. But a few referees came out and tried to help Tommy to the back, but Drew being Drew, he stopped it. He attacked Tommy as he was walking down the aisle to go through the curtain. He just started throwing him around and whipping him into the guardrails and Christ knows what. Actually, at one point, he got him caught underneath the guardrail and slammed it on top of him, like on top of his face, his chest, his bollocks, the works. But they used everything. They fought out into the crowd. I didn't think the match was supposed to be hardcore rules. But I think maybe they let that sort of slip by and didn't worry too much about it. But they also used all kinds of weapons, you know, chairs. They used a baking tray. They used bins or trash cans, and they even used Vegas fuel. You know, representing the sponsor, so fair play to it. And the end of the match, you know, another surprise win. I wouldn't call it an upset, but maybe a bit of a shock. Or a surprise, because Tommy Dreamer picked up the win. Drew basically set up a chair in between the top and the middle ropes, in between the turnbuckles in one of the corners of the ring. Threw Tommy to sort of like go head first into the chair. Tommy put the brakes on so he didn't go into it, and he ended up throwing Drew Fatal head first into the chair. Sorry, no, he didn't. He hit a reverse STO, and Drew went face first into the chair. Tommy planted him with a DDT to pick up the win. But as I say, it was just an incredible match. It didn't top the main event, but it wasn't too far behind the main event. Post-match, Tommy cut a brilliant promo to put Drew over, and I've written the transcript down for it, so I'll read it out. And he said, "Drew, the newfound attitude is friggin' awesome. You just shoved a direct you-know-what up Vince McMahon's ass for letting someone go who's 6'4" and 260 pounds of pure aggression. I know you've been beaten down like a dog, but wrestling is alive on the independents. And it's people like this, in arenas like this, that love what you and I do. Thank you, sir. May I have another match anytime?" And with that, the crowd just got up and they chanted for Drew, they applauded him, and just like that, he didn't have to do a damn thing, and he turned face. And that's what independent wrestling is all about for me. If a guy can put another guy over, because you're not going to get that in the big leagues, unless you're John Cena trying to play goody two shoes. You're not going to get a guy like Tommy Dreamer, a veteran of the Canvas Wars, putting over a guy like Drew McIntyre, a guy who probably should have been at least world heavyweight champion in WWE, in my opinion. He should never have been let go, because he is that good. And I've said it before, I don't just say this because the guy's British, I say this because the guy is that fucking good. As Dreamer said, 6'4", 260 pounds, and he can wrestle. Most guys that size fight. Drew can wrestle, and he can put on a hell of a match like he did here. He didn't get the chance to do that in the WWE, but he's just shoved the you-know-what, as Tommy said, up Vince McMahon's ass, and he's put on a brilliant matches, and he could have had those for years to come in the WWE, but they let the ball drop, or they dropped the ball on him. He could end up somewhere, he could end up in TNA, he could end up in Ring of Honor, he could end up going back to the WWE, who knows. But with all due respect to the independent circuit, because you do have some incredible wrestlers there. I think Drew McIntyre, Drew Galloway is too good of a wrestler to be sort of humping the road. And he should be a megastar, he really should be. Why he's not, I'm not sure. But the sooner he gets back to that level, the better. But yeah, as I say, just like that, after that promo, Drew face, and the crowd left. He left with applause, big thank you Drew chants. He started off a thank you Tommy chant. Just a brilliant moment, and it was probably too low down on the card, this match, I think. Should have been maybe another match or two higher up, but what can you do? Bullshit segment up next. The Extra guys, Don't Ask, versus Diamond Inc. I've heard of Diamond Inc. before. I think I've seen them maybe wrestle a PWG show or something like that. I'm not sure. I've definitely seen them though. I can't remember where they're. But it was a filler segment. After that fantastic moment, that fantastic match, we get this crap, and it's just one part of the show that really pissed me off. A short match where all that happened was Joey Ace turned on Jason Gotti. No one cared, neither did I, and the Extra guys won. FWE Women's Championship match, Ivelisse Velez versus the champion Maria Kanellis. Apparently Maria's been the champion for 2 years. That was unknown to me until I think Jerry Strauss said it. But I wasn't really that invested in the match, so I don't know if the Extra guys versus Diamond Inc. had something to do with that, and knowing that Maria's not a great wrestler, I just wasn't, it was nothing really, because it was just cat and mouse for 3 or 4 minutes, and then Ivelisse kicked Maria in the head, picked up the win. It was just like, we've seen a great match, we've seen shit, and now we're seeing shit again. Anyway, Ivelisse Velez, as I say, she kicked her in the head. She picked up the win. She's the new FWE Women's Champion. Post-match, Candice LeRae comes out and she says she's deserving of a championship match, basically because she beat Ivelisse Velez's team the night before. And when she wanted it was the show in February. I think it's February the 7th. Off the top of my head, I can't remember the date for it, in New York. But Ivelisse sort of says, well, I'm still feeling fresh. Why not fight right now? And she went after her. The bell rang. Referee came back down. So we got a second championship match of the night. And you know what generally happens with impromptu championship matches. It was a pretty good match, to be fair. I thought, I thought it was a controversial ending. Maria distracted Ivelisse on the apron. The match lasted for about 6 minutes, 8 minutes maybe. Maria distracted Ivelisse on the apron, and the ref went to get rid of Maria, obviously can't allow distractions and so on and so forth. And as the referee was distracted, Joey Ryan came into the ring and he super kicked Ivelisse Velez, similar to how he did to Veda Scott the night before. Candice, she caught Ivelisse with the Vagiplex, as Colt Cabana named it on night one, and bam, new FWE Women's Champion. As I said, that's what happens when you have impromptu tag team or impromptu title matches, rather. But I expect we'll see a rematch somewhere down the line, probably in New York in February. But it was a good little moment, really, because Candice LeRae, as I mentioned earlier, she'd do anything that's asked of her, and fully deserved, I think, of holding a singles championship. Brilliant moment for her. Good little moment as well for Joey Ryan as well, to be able to help out his tag team partner to win. The top championship for her division. So, fair play. I can't argue with the fact that she's the women's champion, and I don't think many other people can either. As much as Ivelisse Velez, I think she is the best women's wrestler on the independent circuit. Candice LeRae isn't too far behind her in the number 2 spot, I would say. So, 2 girls definitely worthy of winning the title on that night, I would say. Main event time. The Addiction versus the Young Bucks versus the Adrenaline Express versus the FWE World Tag Team Champions Jigsaw and Tony Nese in a TLC match for the World Tag Team Championships. Wow. Quite honestly, this is one of the best matches of the year for any promotion, without question. Probably one of the best TLC matches I've seen as well. Again, without question, with just so many high spots, high flying spots. Obviously, a lot of uses of tables, ladders, and chairs. And definitely a must-see match. Whether you get onto our videos and purchase the pay-per-view, wait till it comes out on DVD, or however you can get hold of it. If you can't, just watch this. If you're going to watch this show for anything, watch this match, because it was absolutely phenomenal. I would put it up there with one of the best TLC matches of all time. Just brilliant from start to finish. Not a single flaw in the match, I would say. Just wow. I remember I was just glued throughout. Glued. I just couldn't take my eyes off it. It was brilliant. There's loads of cool spots, but I'm going to talk about a couple of them. The coolest spot in this match, and it's probably the coolest spot, or one of the coolest spots of any match that I've ever seen before. You had Nick Jackson stood on top. There was a ladder set up in the ring, and you had another one going from the top rope and through the rungs of the one that was stood up in the ring, sort of balanced in off the top rope in between these rungs. And Nick Jackson was on top of a ladder that was stood up in the ring, and VSK was on the ladder that was on, sort of perched in between the top rope and the rungs of the other ladder. And VSK was trying to suplex Nick onto the ladder that he was stood on. Nick basically, you know, he blocked it, avoided it, and he climbed over onto the ladder that VSK was on. VSK looked to hit another suplex onto the ladder, but this time Nick blocked it with a low blow, and he super kicked him off of the ladder, over the ropes, and through two tables, one that was stacked on top of the other. And it was just such a cool moment because the crowd popped like fuck. It was amazing. Just such raw energy from the crowd and such a brilliant moment, you know. Some people might say, oh, it's only independent wrestling. I don't give a fuck. That was brilliant. You know, I don't think they could have timed it any better for that part, for the part of the match that was going to happen. It sort of helped to bring the end of the match together. Just such a fantastic moment. Not quite Mick Foley falling off the top of the Hell in a Cell, but still a brilliant moment in any match that I've ever seen. Nick after that, Nick reached for the belts. Kaz came in with a chair. Frankie Kazarian hit him in the back. Nick fell down. Christopher Daniels then looked to grab the belts, but Jigsaw caught him with a chair. The Addiction set up two more ladders in the ring, and it became basically a free-for-all where you had everybody aside from VSK trying to grab the belts. And basically everybody started knocking everybody off the ladders, and we were left with Jigsaw and Daniels. Jigsaw knocked Daniels down to the canvas, and the Young Bucks springboarded themselves off the middle ropes onto the two ladders, the two ladders that were free. There were three ladders set up in the ring. Jigsaw was still on one, the other two were obviously free. And the Young Bucks springboarded off the middle rope onto those ladders. And they pushed Jigsaw down from the ladder, obviously trying to push him over the top rope, but he got his foot caught in between the top and the middle ropes. One of the Adrenaline Express, I can't remember which one now, actually tried to help him to sort of untangle his foot. Tony Nese, he sort of jumped off of the turnbuckle to try and stop the Young Bucks, and they both sort of double super kicked him while stood on the ladders, and that was really cool as well, because he just fell down like a sack of shit. Matt Jackson's ladder fell over, so he fell down, but Nick grabbed the belts, and new FWE Tag Team Champions, Tony Nese and Jigsaw's reign comes to an end after one day. Brilliant match, brilliant show of respect as well after the match. You had Tony Nese and Jigsaw and Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian just sort of giving it up for the Young Bucks because, you know, to say, probably the number 2 tag team in the world right now, behind Red Dragon. And that's probably just a bit of favouritism on my part because I'm a massive Kyle O'Reilly fan, but the Young Bucks, if they are behind Red Dragon, they are not that far behind. I mean, you're talking very short distances here. Just phenomenal show, top to bottom, as I say, apart from a couple of little flaws, you know, like the Extra guys versus Diamond Inc. But nobody gave a fuck about that. But such a brilliant, brilliant show. It's just a shame that there's 4 months to wait now until the next one in February. Which is in New York, and then they got one a month later in March in California. And I should definitely be watching both shows. I should probably most likely be doing what I'm doing now, reviewing them as opposed to an NXT show, because I think, in my opinion, it's a nice little change to, like, it sort of changes it up a little bit, you know. Obviously, I review NXT every week. I must admit, I still haven't watched last week's show yet, or this week's. But it's just a nice little change to bring something else to the table for once. There's a House of Hardcore show in October, like at the end of the month. I'll definitely be watching that, and I will definitely be doing the same sort of review for that. Whether I do an NXT review as well that week, I don't know yet, but we'll see when the time comes. That's the end of like FWE ReFueled Night Two. As I say, if you haven't watched it and you can, if you can afford to watch it, get onto rfvideos.com. That's $14.99, which equates in UK money to, or British pounds sterling to tenner. You know, definitely worth the money. If you like your independent wrestling, or if you're just a fan of wrestling in general, and if you're looking for an alternative to the WWE or to TNA or to Ring of Honor or whatever, this is the show for you. This was just phenomenal. Night 1, unfortunately, was on YouTube for a short while, but they've taken it down since. Whether you can find it anywhere else or not, I don't know, but just have a browse around, just Google it, whatever. If you want to watch two brilliant wrestling shows, Night 1 and Night 2, watch them back to back. Absolutely phenomenal. That's the end of this show. I'm not going to do the usual news and the shout-outs and so on and so forth. I'll put the shout-outs in the comments in the notes section below. No news, no birthdays, no grappling greats. That'll all be back again next week. So I'm missing 2 weeks of NXT shows for these reviews. But NXT review will be back on either the 18th or the 19th of October. Thanks very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed, and I hope I've managed to convince some people to start watching Family Wrestling Entertainment, FWE. As I say, thanks for listening, and I'll be back again next week.